record on this computer. On this one. All right. Well, Michael, welcome to the ODAT Chad podcast.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
You are professional. I see that you have like a legit podcasting mic. That's awesome.
Yes. It's amazing what $150 will do for the perception of who you are.
Perception.
A lot of people take me a lot more seriously if I have this mic in the shot. It's kind of stupid. Anyone can buy this mic. It doesn't mean I'm professional at all.
Oh, well, shh. I won't tell anybody if you won't.
Yeah. Actually,
Good.
isn't that what this platform is? Isn't this platform telling people things?
Oh,
So now,
right.
now, now everybody knows. Thanks.
All
Great. Thank
right.
you.
Well, cat's out of the bag, so we'll just have to tell all the dirty details. So that's all good. I am so happy that you had time to talk to me today because we did like a little pre-interview and I
It was
really
great.
enjoyed talking to you because
Me too.
you're like a smart guy and you have lots of recovery in you. You're very well thought out and you were funny. So I was like, this should be a good conversation. So thank you for joining me this morning.
Oh, thank you. Now I have to worry about measuring up to all that. So I'll feel like an imposter version of myself this entire interview.
You're like, damn it.
Was I
Well,
smart enough? Was I funny enough?
was
Did
I
I
good?
have enough recovery? Was I high during the interview? What's going on?
Well, isn't that funny though? Because, and actually you're touching on something that has been coming up a lot for me, which is this idea of just not good enough. You know, it's amazing how everybody sort of struggles on some level with this idea that we're not good enough. And I think for a lot of people, that's at their core of their addiction. But
I
um,
agree.
yeah, but we'll have to dig into that a little bit. But first, I would just love to hear your story. And typically, what I ask people to do is kind of, you know, start with like, what did your parents do for a living? Like, where did you grow up and your siblings? Like family origin stuff. I feel like that is so revealing. So yeah, and then you can just take it from there. And then the second half, we'll talk about your book and some of the offerings that you have, and we'll just kind of see where it takes us. How's that sound?
That sounds great. Sounds
Yay.
like a meeting,
Yeah, I know,
except for the
right?
second part. I don't do the second part in a meeting.
You don't do this. Oh, you don't talk about your book at meetings.
Yes, no, we don't reference outside literature.
Oh, that's all
Um,
right.
unless
So
it's my literature, then we can
so
reference it.
strict. You
I
know how I
know.
get around that? I say, I can't tell you about this amazing book that I'm reading called Great Leaders Live Like Drug Addicts, but then I say whatever the hell I want to say.
Those of us in recovery, we still have the addict mind, and it can do anything, can't it?
So rebellious. Oh my God.
All right. So, my origin story isn't honestly that special. Grew up in California, in Northern California. My mom was a professor at a college, and my dad was a lawyer. And we moved when I was 10 years old to Los Angeles because that's where my mom was from. And I have a sister that's 17 months younger than me. And moving to Los Angeles was a really hard transition for me. I went from being in Los Altos Hills before Silicon Valley, so like gravel roads, um,
Yeah.
cow pastures across the street, people that are just kind of down to earth and wholesome and good. And then my first day in LA at school in fifth grade, someone comes up to me and says, "What does your dad do and what does he drive?" And I'm like, "What? I don't even know that I can. I don't think I know. Like he does stuff and he drives a car. I don't know." And then he asked me if I was going to someone's birthday party, and I was like, "I don't even know who that is." He's like, "Well, yeah, you know what? I was invited. You weren't. So there."
What a
And
dick.
I know, but like I found out that I was quote unquote popular in Northern California school. I didn't know what quote unquote popular was. We didn't think about that stuff, but I was
Yeah.
very aware that I was not popular in LA
Yeah.
because the the values there. And I don't want to overly stereotype, but for any of us who've been in LA,
Oh,
my
go
best friends
ahead.
were
I mean,
transplants. Very superficial, man. Very
a
superficial.
little
So
bit.
so that was a tough transition. And I would just say that, like, growing up, I think the biggest thing for me was my parents were really overprotective. They had their own stuff. They weren't perfect, but they weren't like terrible. And I did not feel equipped with the instructions for how to deal with life on life's terms. I did not know how to deal. I did not know how to self manage, self lead. I had emotional reactions to things I didn't understand. And then I started to notice addictive tendencies. My first drug of choice was a telephone. I would, when I was 16 years old, my parents got me my own private line, and I would race home from school and I would call every single friend to leave a voicemail just so I could get them to call me back and leave me a voicemail. And I would stay on the phone till like 2 in the morning. And it was a way for me to like get out of myself and to not feel what I was feeling or whatever, which that's not a bad drug of choice, but it led to other obviously bad drugs of choice. So, my experience in high school, I experimented with different things, with alcohol, with drugs, but I was pretty much a good kid. And when I went to college, I was so tired of feeling less than. I was so tired of feeling uncomfortable in my body, so tired of feeling quote unquote weak. I decided to try to be harder. And one of the ways I did that was I got liquid courage and I got high a lot. And that was the way that I was able to be the guy that didn't quote unquote give an F. And it made me feel safe. It made me feel in control. It made me feel cool. And I would do that a lot. At the same time, I would have these moments when I was under the influence where I would just like the true emotional, sensitive Mike would just come out and it would just be a complete mess. My friends would be like, what the F is wrong with that guy?
Oh God, I hate that.
So, in college, by my junior year, I took every class like pass, no pass. I had like no credits by my junior year. I was still a freshman effectively. And by my junior year, that's when I got kicked out of my parents' house. Had to be completely 100% financially independent. I had to find a way to pay for school. And I tried to start a business to do that. And I had been inappropriately diagnosed as ADHD. My parents were trying to understand why I wasn't succeeding at school, and it's because I didn't give an F about school. It's not because I had problem paying attention. Actually, I have the unique capability to focus on things I really care about, which I think a lot of us have in common.
Mm-hmm.
And they put me on a bunch of drugs that they just kept putting higher and higher, effectively giving me a street dose of speed.
Oh my God.
And my dad is a recovering alcoholic. I have the gene. So for me, it flipped a switch. And by my junior year, I had gone from, I decided to study for 2 quarters. And so I got straight A's, which was great because us recovering people, we can do anything we put our minds to.
Sure.
But then once I had proved to myself that I could, I decided that I would try to build this business to be able to fund myself. And I decided to start drinking and getting high every night. And it started with, I'm never going to drink alone. But I wanted to during the week and my friends didn't. So what I did was I would stop by Jack in the Box on the way home and get spicy tacos. And I would use that as an excuse for why I needed to drink beer. Just a stupid, I mean, why not just do it? Like, why do I have to buy crappy tacos to prove that it's okay for me to drink?
Right.
And so by my senior year, I'd been kicked out of school. I mean, I was high every day.
Oh
Like
wow.
the way I tried to deal with my alcohol problem was by smoking weed every day. And then at some point it occurred to me that it'd be great if I just merged these things together. And then once I did that, I would do it every day. And then I would start looking for additional things like painkillers or hallucinogens or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But my goal was to get high every day. I got kicked while I was living with all my friends. They all graduated. I got kicked out of school. I eventually got kicked out of my house. I got fired from my job. My car was repossessed, which really pissed me off because I had a great Dr. Dre CD in there, and the guys that repossessed it took it, so I never was able to recover that. It was Chronic 2001. I know, seriously, it was such a great CD. I literally, I saw the tire marks from where they had dragged the car out, and this is how you know you have a problem. And all I was thinking was my Dr. Dre CD was in there. Like not you've
Never
got
mind
an
the car.
issue. Yeah, you've
Oh,
got an
right.
issue, Mike, that you haven't made a payment in 6 months and your car is gone and you've stiffed all your friends for rent and you've been kicked out of school and all this kind of stuff. And no, it's that I lost my Dr. Dre CD.
Priorities. Okay.
I know. So I tried the geographical cure. I tried to move back to LA, which never a good decision. And, I was really alone because the people that I loved weren't people that were drunk and high all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I completely isolated myself and I was kicked out of the place that I was living there and I was kicked out of the job that I got there. And I just started really thinking that, I've got no options. And the only thing keeping me from the street, because I had no money, I had one like pair of clothes, and my pants didn't even fit. I had to use a piece of rope as a belt just to hold them up. And the only thing keeping me from the street was my buddy's apartment. I asked if I could crash for a few days, and a few days turned into a few months. And I was the worst roommate in the history of the world, because when he would go to work, I would just steal his money, eat his food, drink his alcohol, and then invite strangers over to like mess his place up.
Oh my God.
So my dad was always offering to send me to rehab, and I eventually, my friend started convincing me I needed to go, because I think he wanted me out. He actually didn't think I had a problem. He just wanted me to stop doing these bad things. And so I eventually took my parents up on it, because I was running out of options. And I remember the night before I went was the first night that I really noticed that I was throwing up blood for no reason.
Wow.
And I was like, my body's shutting down. My doctor had asked me if I drink a lot, and I was like, no, I don't, maybe a little bit here. He's like, well, the only thing higher than you right now are your liver enzymes. And I was like,
Doctor had jokes.
I know. Seriously, I'm like, I don't know how to combat science, so I'll just not say anything. And then he said, do you smoke cigarettes? I was like, oh, maybe a little bit when I drink, which isn't that often. He's like, well, do you see your fingernail and how it's stained yellow? Those are nicotine stains. I was smoking 2 packs a day, but somehow I was telling him I only, had a cigarette every once in a while.
Serious denial.
Yeah, seriously. And the truth is that, like, go back to it. I felt like I didn't have the instructions. And I had this one night where I decided I was going to put more poison in my body than I'd ever had. My goal was to finally feel high enough, because I hadn't felt high enough. And I was kind of hoping that I would kill myself.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't know how to deal. And I remember I spent an hour pouring like more poison between smoking and drinking into my body than I'd ever had. And I remember I had this moment where I actually felt high enough for like 5 minutes. I was like, oh, there it is. I didn't pass out, but then it passed, and I just started crying, because I was like, I can't even do this right. Like, I can't kill myself right. I can't get high enough right. This is too much work. Like, the hardest job I've ever had in my life is being an active addict. That is by far the hardest job. People watch the movies, they think, it's easy. It's all, no, dude, it is the hardest job I've ever had. And I was just demoralized by that experience. And so that was like a few weeks before my parents offered to send me to rehab, and my friend subtly was hinting that I needed a vacation. My whole life was a vacation, but I needed a vacation, and he wanted
From the hard work of getting loaded. Got it.
Yes, seriously. So I was like, okay, fine. And so September 1st, 2002, I woke up at the Betty Ford Center in Rancho Mirage, California, and convinced that I didn't belong. But it's really interesting when you get around 28 other people in a surreal experience, and they're all sharing your story, you start to understand, hey, maybe I have a problem. So that's how it was. Wow,
that is intense. I have a couple questions for you.
Yeah.
Usually I interrupt people all the way through, but I thought maybe I'd let you tell your whole story and then circle back to some things. So what kind of doctor what kind of lawyer was your dad?
He had done different things, but I think at that time in my life, he was a real estate attorney.
Okay. And what was your mom teaching?
Social psychology. Which was really dangerous, because people that have anything with psychology in it think that they know how to be the therapist for their kids, and then they end up screwing them up.
Oh, I was going to say that's like the worst thing is to try to do therapy on family.
Well, yeah. And then also, it's not like you think you're smart as a social psychologist to like tell your 16-year-old son, hey, your father's an alcoholic and you have the genes. So whatever you do, do not use alcohol and drugs. You do not tell someone who might have the biological predisposition, whether I don't know if that's true or not, but whatever, to be an addict. Hey, don't do this.
Yes. You know what? That is a very good point. And I know you have a little one at home, and I have 2 boys that are older, but you know what I told my kids? And this is a question that comes up a lot is, what do you tell your kids?
Yeah.
About your using and drinking?
What do you tell your kids?
I told my kids that drinking and using is fun, and that's why people do it. and that mom and dad don't have an off switch. So there's like a good chance that you may not be able to turn it off once you start.
Hmm.
And they've heard lots of stories over the years about people who have not been able to turn. Like I have a friend who had like he went to a college, boys college prep school in high school, and then got a scholarship for college, and somebody that they know and love. And I said, he tried meth one time and then turned into a heroin addict for 20 years.
Mm.
And they were like, whoa. I mean, I just try to be honest with them.
Yeah.
I heard a story of this lady who was like, oh my God, my parents told me not to drink and use my whole life. And I go to college, and then I started drinking and using, and they never told me how fun it was. And I was like, oh shit, I better tell my kids how fun it is, so they're not like thinking I'm holding out on them. I don't know. I was like, I better, like you said, don't tell them not to do it. Like you can do it, but be prepared for some pretty shitty consequences. You might suck a dick by accident. And they're boys, by the way, and they don't, apparently they're not gay.
that's
So.
that's a very specific, intentional, like 4-step item right there. Like,
Is that too much, you think?
no, I mean, hey,
I'm
it
not
just
actually sure I
depends.
said that. I occasionally will blurt things out.
I
So,
would prefer to think that you did because it's far more enjoyable on my side telling
right. Yeah,
myself
it's
that
funny.
story.
I mean, my poor kids, I'm so open about so many things. My husband is always like rolling his eyes at me. He's like, woman, just,
I think that's good though. No, I love that you do
yeah.
that because I think that I had that what you just shared. I had that exact same experience that my parents told me how horrible everything was, and I got to college. I'm like, wait, this is fun,
Yeah.
and so you just affirmed kind of. I don't have to worry about it right now because she's 15 months, but like my thought is they need to know the whole truth.
The whole
Like my
truth. Yeah.
sister, I believe, has some level of genetic predisposition, but she didn't end up like I did,
Mm.
And so I think that what's more important is to say that, look, this stuff, there's a reason that people use it,
Right, right. There's a reason.
and everybody has a different reaction to it. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's important to pay attention to the reaction. And I think if one of the reasons I've been so committed to my recovery, and I've told my dad this, so I don't feel bad saying it here, but he spent most of my life being a dry drunk. He never went to
Yeah.
recovery, and so
He
he
didn't do
wasn't
any kind of
able.
like rehab or meetings or anything. He just quit.
No, he's a Midwestern guy that's able to, like, I don't know, he's a freak in terms of his work ethic and all this stuff. And he
Mm.
came home from the bar one night when I was 7 months old, picked me up from my crib, and then dropped me on the floor, which might explain a lot. And yeah, he said to himself, "I can be a drunk or I can be a dad, but I can't be both."
Wow, that's intense.
And he put down the booze, and it, I mean, I think that it really hurt him putting the booze down because he put down his solution, but he
Mm-hmm.
didn't pick
Right.
up another solution. And so he became a workaholic, a codependent for a
I was
period of
just gonna
time, a
say.
rager, like all that. And now he's just like a beautiful man. But like he had this really surreal experience actually, because after I got clean, he decided to try going to a 12-step meeting, and it was. He said he had the hardest time because he couldn't identify with the newcomer or the old timer
Oh, wow.
because he was in
Yeah.
there with like 25 years.
Of
And
abstinence.
yeah, and so he can't relate to the newcomer saying, I just got, these bad things just happened, but the old
Mm-hmm.
timer that like knew the whole deal, he couldn't relate. And so I didn't have a good model for what the solution was. And so I think that as long as
Oh,
I take
yeah.
care of my recovery and I'm open with my daughter about what the variable options are, I
Mm-hmm.
will model a solution for her that she
Mm-hmm.
will become aware of if she finds that she has a problem. And I don't know about you, but a lot of the people that I know that have kids that grow up and they're active in their recovery, it seems like if their kids end up as addicts or alcoholics, a lot of them I see end up in the rooms a lot sooner because
A lot
they are
quicker.
very clear where the solution is. They
Yeah,
know there's a
absolutely.
solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And the what you were talking about really is learning, and I heard it in your story too about not having coping skills for your feelings, right?
Yeah.
And I had the same. I didn't know this. Well, I'm so glad we had this conversation. I didn't know this about you. I had the same experience where I lived in the Bay Area and then moved to LA, in the third grade. And I didn't know that I was popular until I moved and I didn't have any friends.
Yep.
And I became completely self-conscious for the first time
Yep.
and was coming up short, like,
So there you have it, listeners. If you don't want to turn into an alcoholic or an
totally.
addict, don't move to Los Angeles
Well,
and
and
you have a fighting shot.
but from what I hear, there's drug addicts and alcoholics everywhere. So I don't know.
Yeah, and there's actually a really strong recovery in LA because of how crazy it is. But
I know. And
but
a
what
lot
you
of
just
very
said,
charismatic people too.
yes, but what you just said, like, I'm grateful to hear my story through your mouth when you said that, because that's exactly what happened to me.
Isn't that crazy? And I had no coping skills to deal with everything that came up. Like suddenly all these feelings came up and I had no coping skills. I
Yeah.
didn't know, we weren't practicing prayer and meditation and journaling in my house. I wasn't, my mom didn't, bless her heart. She didn't, know, I had big feelings and she didn't know how to deal with me. So she wasn't like, oh, let's sit down and talk about your feelings. And, oh, by the way, everybody else feels that way too. And, it was just, I guess it's so funny because now we're just kind of, people are what kind of woke. I love that term. We're all
No, it's a
woke
great
now.
term.
Yeah, right. We're all spiritually woke. Um, but we're aware of how and I thought it was interesting in your story too. You talked about you were addicted to the telephone, and that's, you were seeking connection,
Yep.
and that it really is part of the cure. It's like they say that alcoholism and drug addiction is a disease of isolation and connection is the cure. And you were craving that connection and using the telephone. That's what they tell you to do when you first get sober, right?
I know.
Is
And
like
but now I hate the telephone because like I had to use it so much in early recovery, but
you're a
that's
little
how it
gun
was.
shy from the phone.
One thing this is just like my own perspective because I'm not a scientist or anything like that or a psychologist, but I did have a mom that was a social psychologist. Does that
Mm,
qualify me? No.
yes.
I think that that we have a variant of obsessive compulsive disorder
Hmm.
where we are obsessed with being able to predict how we will feel. And we are actually willing to create predictable negative experiences because they're predictable, then continue to have unknown experiences that could either be negative or positive. And I don't know about you, when I have even in recovery, when I have an experience that I enjoy, I become obsessed with how can I reproduce that moment. I have a day where my meetings were great because they were in the afternoon. Now my entire schedule is nothing but I only meet in the afternoon. And then I have another day where I had a really
Right.
fantastic time doing podcast interviews in the morning. Now I'll only do this
Only.
stuff in the morning because I want to be able to control this stuff. Or
Yeah.
I had a negative experience. My cat got outside and she's an indoor cat and she's 16 years old. So now what we need to do is build an entire 3-layer like compartmental system to contain the cats because I don't ever want to feel this vulnerable again that I could be, letting my cat die or whatever. Or,
Yeah.
I'm really learning this with my daughter. I can't do this at all. Like there's no way to predict.
Oh, yeah.
But we like to be able to control our future emotions and feelings.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's what's interesting about recovery is that it's like for me, it's been largely about emotion management, right?
Yep.
I think it's important to sort of, examine cause and effect, right? Get to root causes and conditions, like they teach you in the 12-step community. Um, but I do understand that pull towards if I find something I like, I go all out, which makes, some of us kind of successful in the things that we do,
Totally.
right? People who
You
are
have to know how to
successful
harness
are
that power a little bit. Like that's the
for
that's the beauty.
sure.
You can actually harness that power and it
Yeah.
becomes an incredible advantage. It's just you got to know how to do it.
Yeah, I feel like, and I've always thought that like people like us have really big energy, right? And it does need to be channeled. And when it's channeled and focused, amazing things can happen. We
100%.
yeah. So, but
Either amazing or horrible things are going to happen.
dude, we spin out so hard if the
If there's very minimal.
boundaries aren't
Yes.
up, right? And I feel
Yes.
like that's sort of the blessing and the curse of, being, an addict or alcoholic or whatever, is the consequences are so high if we stray from the path too far.
Yes.
right? So it's both the blessing and the curse. Um, I've heard it referred to as like the best worst thing that ever happened, to somebody. It's like, oh, the if you don't walk the path,
Yes.
the path is beset with all kinds of tyranny. I think
Yes.
that was from
Many
Pulp Fiction.
potholes.
Yeah, many potholes. Um, but let's circle back to a couple things. So, you didn't know how to manage your feelings. You used the telephone, but your dad was in recovery, but not, he was sober, but not in recovery. But isn't that interesting that when you started to have problems, he was aware that maybe rehab did he do rehab?
No, he didn't do anything.
No rehab, just quit. But he knew that maybe rehab would be a good idea for you. That's
Uh,
awesome.
I don't know that he knew. I know that they thought they were gonna have to bury their son.
Oh,
And so they started researching options and they came across rehab. I don't think they knew, but like he would take me to breakfast like every couple of weeks and he would say he wanted to buy me a meal, but I knew he just wanted to see that his son was still alive. And
my
every time I was
God.
there, he would offer to send me to rehab. And I think my mom had done most of the research, but like I'm not sure that they were aware because he had such a unique path in the fact that he didn't have to use those tools to stop. Now, I will say he paid the price for not using those tools. And
Yeah.
that's something I've resolved I will never do. But he didn't have to use those tools to stop. He just traded his addiction for his addiction to codependency and work and all this other kind of
Workaholism.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was picking up, and I was like, because he said that he didn't was addicted to anything, but yeah, the workaholism, that's a thing for sure.
We can learn to not use our substance or whatever of choice in one of two ways. We either become addicted to something else that is
Hmm.
equally destructive when we do it in an extreme,
Yeah.
or we become, as some might argue, addicted to recovery, which teaches us balance and allows us
Some,
to harness that energy.
yeah, somebody asked me recently, I think maybe it was a coworker, this guy, super nice guy. I'm always surprised when I meet people who are well adjusted. I have no idea how that happens.
I
Um,
don't believe that you ever have. They don't exist.
yeah, no, I this
I'm
this
kidding.
guy I work with is so nice, and he's just so like emotionally stable and just like a good dude. And but he didn't know anything about recovery, and I'm pretty open about my recovery, and we started talking about it. And he was just like, how do people manage their feelings once they, and I thought that's a great question. It's like we learned some skills that were just missing, right?
Yep.
Like, and you
Yep.
were talking about tools, and so I'm just curious, what kind of tools did you learn in early recovery?
I mean, I think that the most important tools that I learned was that I didn't have the answer and that there was a proven program that did. Like that was that's it. Because when I am relying on myself to overcome whatever is in my way, whatever it is, addiction, work, life, whatever, I have such a limited option for uh, finding the right solution to the right problem, and I have
Hmm.
such a low probability of success. But if I tap into something that is proven to solve that problem, and I know this is like basic, everybody's like, yeah, duh, but like not just addicts, most people actually don't do this. Most people try to solve their own problems and they
Hmm.
have this very limited tool set when they do, and they think
Right.
there's a stigma and they're scared of the vulnerability of reaching out and asking for help. But when you do that intentionally, you are able to access like a tremendously higher probability of success with a tremendously better tool set to be able to solve your problem. And so
Right.
for me, just
Hmm.
the act of surrender alone to a program that is proven to help people in my position was humbling, infuriating, frustrating, and messy. But learning to do that what has I think propelled me to be able to acquire other tools. So like once I had some years under my belt and I was like, okay, my 12-step program is my solution to life on life's terms. This is great. I became a lot more open to other solutions too that I was able to integrate into my recovery, into my 10 step, right? I was able to read specific books on specific things. I mean, even from a professional perspective, it's like instead of trying to say, hey, man, I don't have enough time, it'd be like, okay, so who's the expert on time management? Like, let me go learn from them. Screw all this pride bullshit. Screw suffering and
Seriously.
drowning and skidding around and not being able to get the traction, not being able to be the best version of myself. Now I'm like, hey man, all I have to do is humble myself and ask, and I can be a better version of myself.
Yeah.
Why the F wouldn't I do that everywhere? Romance, finance, eating, exercise. Like, why wouldn't I do that everywhere? But it all started with me being willing to surrender to something that was more effective than I was.
No, that's such a great point. It's so funny because we show up to the rooms like our lives are in complete shambles and we're like, no, no, I got this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm all
No, no.
good. I don't need to go there. You people are
I don't
crazy.
know if I need a sponsor. I mean, I think that I've been doing a pretty good job managing my. Wait, I'm in a meeting because I have a
Wait a minute.
probation officer that's telling me I have to go. Okay, wait, maybe I'm not good at managing this.
You're prioritizing Dre CDs over cars. Maybe my value system is askew somewhere. Mhm.
I wonder what that would look like in a modern day context.
That's
Valuing
pretty.
like your social
I'm pretty sure.
media
Yeah.
over like being having a home, like your
Right.
Facebook.
Your cell phone over a phone over a
Yeah.
house.
Yes, exactly.
Oh my goodness. Well, here's the thing. It's like I've come to understand that like when we have such low self-esteem, it's like we our minds are reaching for some reason why we're not a total piece of shit, right?
Yes.
It's like your mind is designed to help you survive. So while those of us with start out with really low self-esteems, we need to find something to hang on to. It's just an interesting phenomenon when you're on the outside looking in. It's like the guy who is laying on the curb but judging people's shoes. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
I'm laying in the gutter but I'm judging everyone else's shoes.
Yep.
um, it's just a weird phenomenon. It's just like mental illness is really what it is. We become emotional and we lose all perspective, and we can no longer what differentiate the true from the false. It's a weird place to fall into. But then, and it sounds like we just have to hit bottom so hard that it kind of knocks some sense into you. And then once you're willing to let go of your pride, then solutions start coming in. And I just
Yep.
love that thought that you have. It's like, oh, once I understand that, once I level my pride and open myself up to different solutions and asking for help, that like the world is your oyster. It's amazing how the whole world opens up once you sort of get that it's a good thing to ask for help, not a bad thing.
There are so many of us that die or never find recovery simply because we were unwilling to move past an uncomfortable sensation in our body that occurs when we ask for help, like literally a tingling in our stomach. That's what makes us want to not ask for help because we're imagining the shame or imagining the judgment or whatever.
Mm.
And so a tingling in our body is what stops us from saving that body. Like that
Yeah.
is ridiculous. But I also want like your audience, anyone that's in recovery, I want them to understand like we are people that a lot of times feel less than and
Hmm.
that we're not enough. And there can be a tremendous stigma that we battle when it comes to owning the fact that we're an addict or an alcoholic and that we're in recovery. People will be like, it's great, but we still, one of the unfortunate byproducts of being a recovering person in a 12-step program is we are taught how to take off the mask that we use to hide our true selves.
Mm.
But what enables that is putting on a mask in our anonymity.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
we get this subtle message that you can be yourself in here, but I don't know if you can be yourself out there. And so for those of us
Mm.
that, work our program and we get some recovery, the thing I want anyone to know is that I have a lot of business experience. I've applied my recovery as an explicit professional leadership system in every environment, almost every environment that somebody works in. And
Hmm.
what I will tell you unequivocally is that your addiction or your addiction in your recovery is not a stigma, it's a professional superpower. It is a professional superpower. There are companies and leaders that are desperate for the skill set that we have that only we are able to really cultivate
Mm-hmm.
because we have such a desperation to learn how to be our true selves, to learn how
Yeah.
to take off our mask. And I think that what we teach people a lot, or a lot of people think, is recovery is something that neutralizes the negative in addiction. And what I'm here to tell you is when I do my prayers in the morning, I thank God for my addiction before I ever start talking about my recovery.
Hmm.
Because my addiction is the
Mm-hmm.
best thing about me. Not because
Yeah.
I'm able to work hard, not because of all that stuff, but for two reasons. I have incentive and opportunity. I walk around with a loaded gun pointed at my head every day that makes me practice the principles that I learned in recovery that actually make
I love
me a better leader in business. And then, number two, when it comes to living without a mask and leading without a mask, I have a place to go to practice. They don't teach this crap in your MBA or corporate training or whatever. So normies out there that want to learn how to live and lead mask free, they don't have anywhere to go and they don't have the same incentive that we recovering people do. We have an
Right.
entire training academy that saves our life and then equips us with a skill set that actually makes us a more effective leader in today's business world. But we have to be able to change our thinking from, oh, I have to be apologize for the fact that I'm a recovering person. Or for those of us that are more evolved, I love that I'm in recovery. I love recovery. It's great. But you know what? I can't actually have that difficult conversation with my boss because I might get fired. Or I can't actually do this thing with the customer. I might not get the business. The professional world, that's normie land. So I can't practice these principles there. Yes, you can. And it will make you a freaking mutant X-Men that can do superpower type things. But
Yeah.
you're going to look a little different when you do it.
Yeah. And really, what comes up for me when you talk about that is when somebody speaks from the heart, it cuts through all the bullshit.
Yes.
And people really identify that. And I think people are starving for it. This is a great transition to talk about your book, Great Leaders Live Like Drug Addicts, How to Lead Like Your Life Depends on It. By the way, I'm going to leave links to your TED talk that you did in flip flops. That fucking rocked. Good for you. That was
Thanks. That was a
amazing.
difficult decision, actually, but thank you.
I know that created so much controversy. People are so funny.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
Like,
didn't your
like, like, it's a TED talk that says great leaders do what drug addicts do, and nobody's like, "Hey, he's telling people to act like a drug addict." Everybody's like upset about my flip flops. Like, it's like, what? Like,
it's
what
like,
is my? What I
that's
know
what
I
you're
have
choosing to
ugly
focus
feet.
on?
I know I have ugly feet. I'm sorry, but you know what? It's like
Everybody has
really
like,
far away. I know. No, no. My wife has assured me that I am disproportionately uglier in the foot department than most people.
oh, okay.
And
Well, leave it
yet
to your wife to be honest.
I wear flip flops. Oh, she's very authentic. But yeah, it was crazy.
Just
Like
very
all the
well.
things that I said, and that's what people get fixated on. I mean,
Okay, well,
people
that was
loved what I
hilarious.
said, but
Yeah.
it just they criticized. I thought I would get criticism for saying great leaders that leaders should run their organizations like addicts, and instead I
Yeah.
got criticized for wearing reef sandals
For your
that have a
sandals.
bottle opener in them, which is like ironic in so many levels.
Yeah, right? Many layers of irony.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
That is super fun. But listen, that was a great talk. I'm going to leave a link to the TED Talk in the show notes. But the three principles that you talked about, authenticity, surrender to outcome, and do uncomfortable work. You sort of touched that on those three things. And then I know you have a program called Mask Free Program. But listen, you kind of touched on all these things, and I'm sure you can go deeper on these. But I just think it's so interesting that when you first get sober, you don't really know who you are, right? You don't know
No,
who you really are because the survival personality is very different from the sober true personality. And for those of us who started drinking and using young, they say that slows down your maturity. And so you get sober and you don't know who the hell you are, especially in the first 5 years. And then if you're an adult and you have to go be out in the business world and try to make a living, it's a very confusing time. And what I really appreciate about your book is that you I don't know what the right term is, but you shortcut it for people.
Yep.
right? Like you shorten the learning the learning cycle, which is sort of the purpose of the podcast and books. And it's like, let's take our experience and shortcut this for a lot of people and help clear up some of the mysteries. So do you want to just go over the three principles and maybe give us a little overview of your mask-free program?
Yeah, that'd be great. So just the backstory is, I started working in retail in my recovery, and then I spent 8 years in corporate America, and I felt like an outsider, and I didn't have a college degree. And then I ended up being the guy that managed the people that used to mentor me because I used the principles I learned in recovery to be successful instead of trying to become an excellent professional and business person.
Mm-hmm.
I took everything that I learned in recovery then and I said, can I start a company using these three principles? And I founded a company in 2010 that ended up being an Inc. 500 company, and we sold to a public company.
Congratulations.
We grew 20,000% in 6 years. And it's all because we had no competitive advantage other than using these principles. And so then
Wow.
I did that TED talk, and now I'm teaching other people this stuff. And basically, here's the beautiful thing that Bill Wilson did. And he didn't do it alone. He took principles that were in a religious organization called the Oxford Group, and he
Mm-hmm.
stripped out the religion and made them accessible to all people that had the malady of alcoholism.
Beautiful thing.
And so what I'm trying to do and what I'm doing is I'm stripping out the need for anyone to be an addict in recovery or no addiction to be able to access that skill set. Because what I learned is, so the first principle is practice rigorous authenticity. So there's a lot of hype around authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
People love to talk about it.
Love to talk about it.
But it's a freaking fantasy. People aren't actually doing it. I mean, when was the last time you heard a politician answer a question with "I don't know"?
Listen.
Like, we're begging
Yeah.
for authenticity, but we
Yeah.
don't get it. And everybody can point back to that time in their life when they kept it real. But rigorous authenticity, what we learn in recovery is it's no matter the cost, no matter the stakes, no matter what happens. And so one of the things when I started saying, why am I able to practice rigorous authenticity and all my peers or the people that I'm coaching aren't? It's because I have a training ground. I have the actual step-by-step how in being a recovering addict. And so the problem is that, like, so for example, like, I'm a huge Brene Brown fan, love her, but I read her books. I was inspired by the what and the why, but she didn't tell me how to do it. And the great thing about the 12-step program is no matter my mental capacity, no matter my education level, whether I'm slamming dope in my veins every day or drinking 2/5 every day, does not matter. If in any country, in any language, there is a step-by-step process that will give me a fundamental transformation. Okay, that is more life-changing and more life-saving than authenticity and leadership. So why the F can't our leaders figure out how to be authentic? And the reason is that no one's ever showed them how. Literally, no one's ever shown them freaking how. And meanwhile, I'm sitting here having this incredible career and all this amazing success that I don't even feel worthy of. And I feel like an imposter. And what I realize is that my effing superpower, what makes me a better leader than the other leaders I'm around, is nothing that I've learned professionally. It's everything I'm learning on Wednesday and Friday night at my home group. Because I have a step-by-step how on how to be authentic. And people are
Yeah.
begging for authentic brands, products, companies, and
Yeah.
leaders, but they're not getting it because people don't know how. And so I realized practicing rigorous authenticity as an ideal, as a fantasy, inspiration's cheap, transformation's priceless, right? So like how do I actually practice rigorous authenticity? Because here's the deal. You can tell an addict what they should do. You should say, hey, stop doing this. Stop using, stop lying, stop hiding. Or to a leader, stop hiding your weaknesses. Stop saying yes when you could say no. Stop avoiding difficult conversations. Stop holding back your unique perspective. Stop manipulating your employees. You can tell someone how to stop until you're blue in the face, but nothing changes until you tell them what to start instead. And that start needs to be a specific how. And so what I learned was, recovery taught me how to be rigorously authentic, but what I needed to do was to give everybody in the world access to the how in a very simple way in the arena that is most hostile to authenticity, being their professional life. And so the key, when I thought about what do we do, the key to practicing rigorous authenticity is the next two principles. It's surrender the outcome. Leaders and professionals are never taught this. They're taught to obsess over outcomes.
Yeah.
And so what you see in corporations and startups and nonprofits, companies of any size, CEO to frontline employee, what you see is people obsessing over things that they can't control at the expense of the things that they can, because they
Mm-hmm.
are so obsessed with the outcome. But in recovery, we are taught that we have to surrender the outcome. We get really good at listing all the things that we can't control, Xing them out, and looking only at the things that we can. And in the process, what happens is we reclaim 50% of our energy. And
Mm-hmm.
that sounds like new agey self-help, whatever. Like that, like every leader in the
Very
world is
practical.
reading a book on productivity and efficiency. And here's what I
Mm-hmm.
have found in assessing. I've assessed over 1,000 leaders. I work with companies like Google and all this other kind of stuff. People are wasting 500 hours a year managing optics instead of impact, managing their mask. And so if you want an immediate competitive advantage, surrendering the outcome gives you 500 extra hours a year to be more successful professionally. Imagine the bigger the organization, the more those hours stack up. And when you surrender the outcome, you are then able to do uncomfortable work. And so the thing about uncomfortable work is that professionals will talk about, these are the management tactics, and leaders will talk about strategic plans and execution plans, and the 5 ways to sell somebody and make a presentation. What we don't talk enough about is we are taught how to do smart work and we are taught how to do hard work. Those are intellectual and those are physical.
Mm-hmm.
We are not taught how to do emotional work. We are not taught how to do
Right.
uncomfortable work. And so what happens is in the professional world, all of us have seen someone doing 8 hours of hard work or smart work because they're avoiding 5 to 10 minutes of uncomfortable work. Like that difficult
Yeah.
conversation that you need to have with your boss,
Yeah.
with your peer, with your employee performance management, with your customer negotiations, with a partner, hell, even with your significant other, right?
Yeah.
We avoid difficult conversations all the time, and it costs us a tremendous amount professionally. And the thing is that you do not do uncomfortable work if you don't have clarity and energy. And what we learn in recovery is we achieve a level of clarity and energy in the 12 steps. And what I realized was if we practice rigorous authenticity, we really try to identify what are the masks that we're wearing and what's true to us, that's a clarity. When we surrender the outcome, it's like the jet fuel for being able to do this work because we reclaim all this energy. And then that's what allows us to do the uncomfortable work. And those that are able to practice rigorous authenticity, surrender the outcome, and do uncomfortable work are more efficient, more effective. People actually want to like follow them. And the problem is, and this is the most important point, we in recovery think that, oh, well, if what you're saying is true, Mike, then we would have all been running the world by now. Something has changed in the world in the last 25 years that makes this skill set 10 times more valuable. And most people just don't know it. And it's 2 things. Number one, connectivity with each other is fundamentally transformed. We used to be hyper connected to the people that were closest to us, and now we're hyper connected to everybody in the world, which means that our level of connection is far more shallow than it's ever been. At the
Absolutely.
exact same time, our economies have made the transition from a manufacturing economy to a services economy. And in a services economy, human connection is the product. And so in a world where connection is a tenth, and in a world where now business, just in the last 25 years, connection is 10 times more important, the old command and control style of leadership where you don't admit weakness, you don't admit fear, you don't admit imperfections, all that kind of stuff, that's out the window. That doesn't matter anymore. That's actually not effective. And
Right.
there's a lot of deeper stuff with that. But what that means is that now leaders and companies are like, how can I find authentic employees and leaders? And they get people that'll check the box on reciting the Brene Brown quotes, but they don't get
Mhm.
people that know how to systematically implement living and leading mask free. And that's why the best talent pool for every employer in the world is in a 12-step meeting right now. That's
Preach,
I'm
brother.
done.
That is
I'm
so
done
good.
preaching. I know I just
Oh,
went off.
so
I'm
good.
sorry.
Did you see me taking notes? I was like,
I
no, that's
did.
so good.
I felt
And
bad though. I'm like, I'm on a rant. I guess I'm just going to do
no,
it.
no,
I
no,
just
no,
had
no.
to.
I love your energy. That's amazing. And then I suddenly realized, oh, I didn't need to take notes. It's in the book.
Oh, it is. Yes, it is. Every teaching people how to
It's
do this
so
is in the book.
no, it's so good to hear it though. And it's so inspiring and exciting to it's like as soon as you said it, I was like, yeah, absolutely. Everything is so superficial and we're still craving that connection. Um, and we are moving towards that. I was like, oh my God, we have moved from manufacturing to services. And so people do need that playbook. And I didn't realize, I love Brene Brown. I didn't realize that it was missing the how, because I get that through the program, right? Like I got that.
So here's what happened. I got so hyped on Brene. Like if I ever meet her one day, I will probably like pee on myself. Like seriously, like I love her. I worship her.
Yes.
But she is coming from a different perspective, right? And we need her to make it safe for people to share the how. But one of the things I did was I gave all of my employees at my company. I was like, dude, this is how we're gonna roll. And I gave them gifts of imperfection and daring
Mm-hmm.
greatly. And I'm like, you just need to live this. And then I remember like being at breakfast with one of my employees and being like, she was telling me about a problem. And I'm like, why aren't you just doing what's in the book?
She's like, it's
She's like, I'm not like you. I don't really know how to turn this into how I operate on a daily basis. Like she's made a really good point. Let's
yeah.
be vulnerable. Let's be imperfect. But what do I do when I'm in the room with you or with a
Mm-hmm.
customer or whatever? There's no practical step by step, and there's no one that's like supporting me along the way, like a sponsor. And there's no society of other people that are making it safe, like we have in recovery. And so she's like, the reason that you're able to do this is because you have recovery.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, screw that. She, Julie McKnight, if you're out there listening, you should have something that shows you how to do this too. And so
Exactly.
all I'm trying to do is do that, like that last, mile, like, home for everything that Brene started and other people have started. And,
Yeah.
and I'm not necessarily doing something special. All I'm doing is saying I'm taking something that's been working for 80 years globally for
Mm-hmm.
millions of people and just applying it in a new way to create a how for being an authentic leader.
Well, yes. Well, this will be the one thing I disagree with you on. I do think it's special. I think it's so needed. Like it's a definitely the missing link, right? Is we need the how to translate that, bridge that into like the professional world. And so I do think it's special. Tell me more about your mask free program. Is that
Yeah,
something
so
you do? Do you guys do that on site and online?
Yeah, so basically the Mass Free program, this is going to sound very familiar to all of us in recovery. Let me tell you how I created it. So I started I held 2 meetings a week for professionals of any kind.
Perfect.
There was
Okay.
supposed to be a mask-free meeting where people just could just come in and be authentic and vulnerable.
At your
Try and
work or
I did it out after I sold my company. I
um,
was like, how do I give other people this experience? So it was
yeah.
just for people that I knew in Nashville at
Okay.
the time. They could
Hmm.
just come in, so that I had people in all different types of industries, some in recovery, most not. And they would come in and it'd be like the first time that they could be in a professional networking thing or whatever. And
Okay.
instead it was like a 12-step meeting and they were able to share.
That was like a
And so
little
they were
Trojan horse. You were like,
exactly.
come to a professionals meeting.
Oh, I definitely took some
Within that
people to the
recovery.
actual 12-step meetings from that because they had issues. But it was the first time anyone had said you can come to a professional environment and your strength is in how vulnerable you get. And so I had these meetings twice
Wow.
a week for a year and I did all this research and that's where I refined the principles. And it totally effing failed
Oh,
because
interesting.
people wouldn't practice the principles.
At work, they wouldn't do it.
No, in the meeting. They didn't even understand
Mm,
them. I thought
mm.
they came secondhand to me, it was really hard for them. And so it would just be like this. You ever been in a meeting where people are just like, it's messy and they're vomiting and there's like no solution whatsoever? It was
Oh.
like that because I hadn't
Hmm.
taught them the solution. So then I shut the meetings down and I did my TED talk and all these people started asking me to teach them the 3 principles. And
Hmm.
so I developed a specific step-by-step system to allow
Hmm.
someone to implement them in their life. And I started doing workshops. And in the workshops, people would have these light bulbs and go, this is amazing. This is great. And then I would check in with them 90 days later and nothing changed.
Oh no.
And then I did coaching, like different types of coaching. And what I realized was I was like, why is this failing? Oh, because in recovery, it's not about one of the legs of the stool. It's about all the 3 legs in the stool.
Right. Yeah.
And you have to have a system that is the common language and framework for how we look at the world and overcome our challenges and thrive. And then
Hmm.
you need a guide. You need a sponsor that has experience working that system that's going to help you through it so that you're not figuring it out on your own. And then you need a society full of people working that system with their own sponsor, because what that does is it reinforces the value system and it gives you access to infinite experience using these tools. And I had joined these entrepreneur groups, you know, for CEOs and companies that were over 1 million in revenue and all this kind of stuff. But everybody, there was no sponsor. Everybody had a different system. It was valuable, but it just wasn't valuable enough. And so I was like, oh, I just need to take these three legs and put them together. And the other thing I realized was 12-step fellowships didn't explode until there was literature, until you could say,
Mm.
the answer to your problem is in this book, but unfortunately, if you just read it, you're screwed. Knowing the answer is different than living the answer. So what you're going to need to
Yeah.
do is you need to read this book, and then you need to join this program that gives you what's in this book, full of people that have read this book and are doing this work. And so for us to create a world where leaders and professionals are able to live and lead mask free, I realized that we needed a mask-free program, and we needed the three legs. We needed a mask-free system, the principles, a mask-free sponsor, which we are building, people that have experience practicing these principles, and then a mask-free society. And so the way that I bring this to the world is I do a lot of social content, and I do a lot of speaking for like companies and all that kind of stuff. But I have a mask-free program where we have a mask-free society meeting every Monday at 6 p.m. Central. And people are able to register and come in, and it's where I teach people the three principles in a hybrid format, like a 12-step meeting, but a little bit more like group coaching.
Mhm.
And we're building an online portal that'll be out in a month that will
Ooh.
literally have a suite of tools for the system.
Mhm.
And then it'll have sponsors, and then it'll have society meetings. And so anyone that wants to learn how to live and lead mask free, they join this program, they learn the system, they get a sponsor, and they go to the society meetings, and they never have to wear a mask again. And that teaches them how to say no, how to not hide their weakness and be able to accelerate their growth, how to have difficult conversations, and how not to hold back their unique perspective so they can be innovative. And it's all in the book. But like, even my team was like, we just need people to get the book. I was like, guys, you haven't paid attention. The book is the beginning, but I
Mhm.
literally write in the book that you cannot do this alone with the book. If we wanted alcoholics and addicts to get clean and sober, we would just hand them the book and say good luck. We wouldn't have all these meetings and sponsors and all that kind of stuff, because the problem is that the rest of the world is trying to wire us to use, and the
Yeah.
rest of the world is trying to wire us to wear the mask. And so the problem is we haven't diagnosed the real problem is people are addicted to wearing a mask. That's
Yeah.
the real problem.
They
So
don't know
that's
what
why the
else to
mastery
do.
program was created.
Yeah, no, oh, this sounds brilliant. I'm so excited for you. I'll leave links to everything on the show notes. This is really great work that you're doing. I'm so
Thank
excited
you.
for you. It's so needed. There's so many of us that are just trying to get to the next level. It's like a lot of people when they find recovery, it's like we're kind of behind the eight ball, right? Like where other people were like going to school and doing these amazing things and progressing their careers, we were busy smoking and partying, right? And
Yep,
having a good
totally.
old time. And so we show up and we're a little behind the eight ball. So this is feels like an accelerant, right? It's
Dude, you
again,
can skip the people that are in front of you using these skills. It's like,
yeah,
it is so simple, but we all know that simple isn't easy.
simple is not easy. Yeah,
But
I mean, we
it
just
is
need
that
to,
simple.
yeah, we just need to be, a lot of us just need to know what to do instead, right? And I find that in recovery, I have a set of beliefs, which, when I'm presented with a problem, I come up with the same kinds of questions, which lead me to the same sorts of decisions that end up leaving me in some sort of a spiral. And there have been times in my recovery where I'm like, how did I get here again? It's like
Yep.
I needed new information. I needed to know what else to do instead, right? And so
Yeah.
I need new questions, I need new ideas. And it's so nice to be able to have people who kind of have figured some stuff out and can give me the shortcut. So I love a shortcut. I don't know who doesn't.
We love shortcuts. We're terrible at taking the healthy ones.
Yeah, so bizarre. Well, I think
Doesn't
with a
make any
little bit of
sense.
recovery, people get a little bit they get woken.
Oh, dude, like I take an antidepressant just to like regulate some of my chemistry, and I was telling the doctor, I'm like, I really don't want to have to take this, and he's like, no, it's good for you. And I was like, God, that doesn't sound right. I loved putting drugs in my body. Why is it that now
I
I'm in
know.
recovery and I'm like, oh,
Well,
I don't want to
that's
be reliant on a drug? Like, I mean, I was like, this
how
doesn't even
crazy is
make
that?
sense. And yet at the
Girl,
same
yeah.
time, for any of us that are on a prescription medication of any kind, I don't know if you guys do this. A lot of my friends have said this is true. I'll hoard them. Like I need to make sure I don't run out. I'll be like, hey doc, can I get an
Right.
extra? Like it's not a mind altering drug of any kind,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Right? It could be fucking green tea, but I'll like want to hoard it and make sure that I never run out like I used to with
Yeah.
my DOC. It doesn't even make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense, but that's okay because we don't need to have everything figured out, just like the important things, right?
Yes. As long as we don't use and as long as we live by spiritual principles, things have a tendency to work out.
They do, yeah. And I just love, the idea about the open to outcomes, surrender to outcomes. It seems like when we're open to outcomes like that, then the possibility of something better than what we originally had come up with is possible.
A
Because
hundred
I find,
percent.
yeah, my thinking can be so limited and I don't even realize it. Even when I think I have illusions of grandeur, it's like I'm missing out on things that were actually meant for me, not trying to steal someone else's dream, right? It's like, no, there's something better for me that fits me. So I love the idea of surrendering outcomes. So good. You're doing great work.
Thank
I'm so
you.
proud of you.
You are too. Thank you for creating a
Oh,
platform for conversations like this.
well, yes. Well, I tell you what, it's keeping me sober. So I appreciate your willingness to bring this to the professional world. You know, I'm a professional, and I come from Silicon Valley, and it's desperately, desperately needed.
I know.
So yeah, let's get you out there. Let's get you hustling.
Dude, I'll go anywhere and share this message. Seriously.
That's
My life's
awesome.
purpose.
Oh, your life's purpose. Isn't that amazing to be able to do your life's purpose?
It's an incredible blessing to
Yeah.
know it and then do it. And I think, people always ask me, how do you know who your true self is? I was like, you don't. The way you find out is by finding out who you aren't.
Oh, that's good. I have to write that down. Unless it's in the
There you go.
book.
That one actually isn't in the book. It'll
Well,
probably
we
be in the
have it on
next one.
recording, so we are set.
There you go.
Well, listen, thank you so much for your time this morning. It's just such a pleasure to talk to you. And
You as well.
yeah, I'll put links to everything, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do this again soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Have a great day. Thank you so
All right, you
much.
too.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.